Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the pod. You've seen 108 episodes. This is the 109th. I don't need to name the pod this time because I decided that. We are talking about the holdovers tonight. Just three of us, Max, Ben, and George. Paul Giamatti in a tour de force of acting performance. Divine Joy Randolph with an outstanding job as well. Dominic Sessa crushed it in his debut. We're going to get into all of that. Let's dive on in. Guys, what do you think? The holdovers.
Um, well, I enjoyed it a
Don't all
lot.
jump at once.
Honestly, this is it's a very Alexander Payne. If you've watched any of the stuff, certainly a lot of shades of Sideways, and not just because it involves Paul Giamatti, but it has that like sort of comedic effect to an otherwise heartfelt and not a coming of age story. Everyone is sort of coming into their own, dealing with different traumas. Um, you have Mary, who's dealing with losing her son to the Vietnam War, and then you've got the curmudgeony Hutton,
Hunnam.
Hunnam, that's his name, Professor Hunnam, who's dealing with just figuring out how to be a person that doesn't exist outside of Barton. And then you've got the kid. There's other characters, but they sort of leave, somewhat fast. And that's for the better, I think. I think they add a certain dynamic in the beginning, but their characters are too flat and not very deep.
They're a little one-dimensional.
You've got honestly, when I watched the film, to those who watch football, I kept thinking the football guy was Trevor Lawrence, and
He had the hair, right?
the asshole guy really looked like Justin Herbert.
Yeah. Coons.
It was
So
pretty unnerving. What's his name? Kuntz is he also reminded me of like Jeff Spicoli from what is that? Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
I mean, the hair.
The hair, the attitude, doesn't doesn't fucking give a shit, especially because what is it? Professor Hand is a history teacher, right? But I don't know if you guys have seen that movie.
Mm-mm.
Wow. You're missing out. You got to watch that. But anyway, yeah, I did really enjoy the film. I thought it was incredible the way that he weaved together, moments of comedy and entertainment with moments of genuine depth for these characters, that they are experiencing something. And simultaneously, I felt like as an audience member, I was experiencing similar things, thinking about life in different ways and thinking about what I'm thankful for having. And I think that's one of the strongest things that a movie can do. Entertain, but also make you think.
This was a Ben Green pick, wasn't it?
It was.
I think, and Max, I want to hear your thoughts in a minute, but I think the timing of this in the year maybe drawing the similarity, but I feel a lot about this one the way I did about Banshees last year, just in terms of a really, really well-made film, solid character piece that makes you think. And I think, while, maybe Banshees is a little bit more out there with the Martin McDonagh-ness of it, I think
It's a good
this.
comparison though, because they're both, comedic with a sense of. I mean, obviously, like you said, Banshees is more extreme, but they both deal with, just the condition, the human condition, loneliness, and trying to find a family,
Despair.
trying to friendship and Banshees. So I think that's actually a really good comparison, and not just because I picked both of those films.
Ben, you pick good movies.
I try.
Northman I objected to and I still object to, but everything else you
It's
picked.
not a bad movie. It's his worst film, but I still don't think it's a bad film. I wish you would watch his other films because
I might.
Lighthouse is absolutely
I might.
perfect.
Don't tempt me. Don't threaten me with a good time. Max, the Holdovers.
Yeah. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. I think Ben, you touched on this a little bit, but that there's just that there is like a just sense of reminding us what it means to be thankful for something. And that I think the way that it was written did a really beautiful job of kind of telling us and reminding us as well. But like, God, I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this. So pardon me for this. But I think, with Paul Giamatti delivering this performance where he has those instances of kind of reminding Angus about the backgrounds and the lives of other people. It just is a perfect sort of holiday film, whether it's Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, um, just winter holiday film to make you feel good, but also kind of impart some really fascinating lessons in there too.
Also, I think more important than make you feel good, make you feel bad,
Mm,
make you feel sad.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I was most impressed with is there are moments where you could really turn this into a cliche. Have the teacher completely transform and then, every have a happy ending. It remains to be a very real film where people are changing very slowly over very, dramatic incidents, basically. But the sort of conditions in which they're sort of made into these people still exist. It is not like, a cliche holiday film where everything is solved at the end, where they become a better person. They're still stuck in this, like, what is the professor Hunnam says something like a hen house, or like everything's full of shit. It really remains that way, except they're sort of evolving, they are progressing even through all of that, through the adversity. And I think that's the thing that remains to be the most impactful is a lot of holiday films, a lot of, cliche films. It makes you feel nice, but it really doesn't change your outlook because that's not how life is. And
Yeah.
I think this really does a great job showing that hope and that heartfeltness, even through the shit that is life.
I totally agree. I think you could have had Hunnam end up as this Grinch metaphor where his heart grew three sizes at the end of the movie. And
Mm-hmm.
that was never the destiny for this character. I'm going to bring up Banshees again, where the ending is perfectly imperfect.
Yeah.
These characters aren't, absolved of every wrongdoing they've ever done. They're not different people, with a change of heart overnight. Ben, you hit the nail on the head. It's, we see a gradual progression, but they're not changing who they are as a result of their relationship or the situations that they've been in.
I think
They're,
essentially the other essential thing to that is that their conditions aren't changing. At the end of the day, he does basically, go overboard and take this kid to his father who's absolutely mentally unstable. Um, and because of that, he has a choice at the end, and it's that much more poignant because you realize, these are real stakes that he chooses to keep his job, and the kid goes to military school, which is ever more, impactful given the other story with Curtis Lamb, who went to Vietnam and died, never got to, actually go to college, never got to live his life. So he chooses to, essentially leave, but also the I, I guess the hopeful part at the end is that he actually gets to live his life as well. He's sort of been chained to Barton because of his circumstances, like a lot of these kids. I mean, it's a nice sort of foil for a lot of these kids where he's just as upset in ways. He enjoys teaching, but he's just as upset to be chained to this place because of his circumstances, just like everyone else is sort of just thrown there because they are unfit to be elsewhere.
Yeah, I think as you talk about literary foils and film foils, we see that a lot, not in all of the movies that we talk about, but certainly here. And in this film, we sort of get a I don't want to call it a three-way foil, but you've got um Hunnam, Angus, and Mary all with sort of similar situations off of each other in each different way. Like the relationship between Mary and Angus mirrors itself. The relationship between Hunnam and Mary mirrors itself. And obviously between Hunnam and Angus, that's the core of the film. You send the other four kids off at the end of the first act to
I
really
said that,
focus in and hone in on this relationship.
I think when I say there are foils, I guess actually the true foil is Mary, in that both of them are sort of by at Barton by not really their own choice, by their circumstances. Mary chooses to be there because that's where her son and her were last together. Um, but I guess the idea behind me saying they're foils, they're like evolutions. Like they're a similar person, um, and one is sort of the evolution of what that person would be if he continued on this like road. Um, what's the kid's name? I'm blanking on it.
Tully,
Angus.
Angus.
Angus, yeah, Angus Tully. They have such crazy names too. Angus Tully. It's a ridiculous name.
I've got the letterbox for the movie up. We've got uh Angus Tully, Teddy Kuntz, Alex Allerman, Yejun Park, and Jason Smith.
Well, think about all the other names on like the head on the gravestones too. It was like quintessential preppy New England. Like,
Oh, sure.
yeah.
But
um, and I think it's sort of heightened by the Roman like background between Mr. Hunnam is always talking about like all these Roman and Greek tales, classics. And I think it actually works pretty well, given that the old sort of classical nature of these boarding schools, and also the fact that he keeps mentioning like Caesar and a lot of that sort of time frame. Mentions like this is your crossing of the Rubicon. I think it kind of works. Like there are certain norms that he's sort of adhering to. I mean, this is a lot of like ancient Rome stuff was sort of just established rules that weren't written down. Um, and he sort of has that still in him. Like he won't pass someone just because they have money. He still has these like tenets that are basically he follows and everyone else disregards, which is actually a great comparison to Rome. Um,
well, also, Hunnam's philosophy when it comes to, or his principle when it comes to whether or not to advance or pass legacy student or someone whose parent is a wealthy benefactor of the school, that comes from his own experience, right? When he's in Boston with Angus and he sees his former Harvard classmate, it brings up the memories of how he was kicked out of Harvard for
but
being
yeah,
accused of something he didn't do, plagiarism, where he had been in this situation with a legacy student whose parent was a wealthy benefactor. And so you would think that based only on that, it would just be spiteful or vengeful, but really what it boils down to for Hunnam is a matter of right and wrong. And he's not going to deviate from what he thinks is the right path for, you know, his teaching method, for lack of a better phrase, just in the sake of, you know, money or, you know, legacy or whatever
Well,
you
I
might.
think that I think you see that also in the dynamic between Hunnam and Hardy, the headmaster of the school, who was his former student, who probably had some of those privileges sort of thrust upon him, where he was given a grade that he might not have deserved. But Hunnam keeps these principles close to his chest, and he's continuing to do so, even when being criticized by a former student who has surpassed him in sort of the social ladder of the film.
Yeah, I think the other thing that I was thinking about is and I lost my thought. That's terrible. It's right there.
All right. If it comes back to you, you can interrupt whatever we're talking about and go back to it. I do want to talk about Dominic Sessa in his first film role as Angus Tully, because for a debut performance, I mean,
Oh, I got it. Sorry.
go ahead.
I was about to say it also fits with the sort of dynamic. It really came into its own in the 60s, but in the 70s, still with Vietnam War. The Vietnam War challenged a lot of people's, ideals. A lot of people were sort of conservative, like held certain norms and ideas, and sort of the countercultural movement changed a lot of that. And you see that even with Hunnam, where he's like this old-fashioned guy, but he understands the toll of war and things like that.
Well, you see that with the uh, handicapped war veteran in the bar during the pinball scene, I guess, where
Yeah,
Angus has had this very sheltered life, and he doesn't really appreciate that this guy might just appear to be an aggressor in a bar with a hook for a hand, but Hunnam sort of steps in and doesn't necessarily acknowledge out loud that, hey, this guy lost his hand in the war, but the subtext is there through his actions, where we can sort of gather that on our own and understand that there's a lesson being imparted from Hunnam to Angus in that moment.
I think it's more of a visualization of like
It's a
a lot of,
visualization of what he said earlier about Mary.
yeah. I mean,
And
a lot of people, like when they look at war, and like especially the Vietnam War, this is a big thing. The worst wounds are always the mental wounds, not the physical ones. Um, so that's like I feel like it's a big visualization. And then after, when he goes out, he mentions like every Barton men don't go to war. And he says except for Curtis Lamb. This idea that like the rich sort of get to escape all of these horrors that everyone else is destined to do. They don't really understand the toll that it takes on the rest of society, the rest of people, people who lose people who lose limbs, and all of the rest of like mental scars that come with being over there. And so I think it's a great backdrop, especially for like the rich and powerful, but they don't realize, and even for Hunnam, like he didn't go through war technically. I guess he said he was like an air raid warden, but um, he was basically screwed over to advance like this rich kid and discarded. Uh, and that's a great theme for a movie called The Holdovers, where everyone is essentially the kids that are discarded. So you have this idea of the rich discarding people, the powerful discarding people, and then the kids that are discarded by their own parents. This cruel world, and you got to find a way to make it in. It's quite a beautiful movie. Like there's a lot to like compare. There's a lot of great parallels. It's really well put together. I'd say it's definitely his best film that I've seen all of his films, and it's his best film in my opinion, by far.
Grace,
Also,
I did see that you gave this a big old 5 out of 5 on Letterboxd.
ooh,
it's a really really well
He
crafted.
doesn't just hand those out.
I do not.
That's
I,
big.
I am pretty generous with my like 4 and 4.5, but 5 stars, you got to earn it. My most controversial one is probably still John Wick. Um, I really like that film.
You did give Chapter 4 5 stars. I remember that.
I was on a kick. I gave that. I got Sisu at 5 stars. Maybe like in a year, I'm gonna have to reevaluate that. But I fucking love those films. But this film is really good. I mean, it's better than those films.
I'm just
Like,
gonna fast forward a month real quick. Number 2, John Wick Chapter 4. Number 1, Sisu. And the Holdovers at 3.
No, Holdovers is the first honorable mention.
the honorable mention Holdovers. I gotta mention The Beekeeper with Jason Statham.
Yes.
I'm so looking forward to when we do that episode.
And then Wonka slides its way in there too at number 4.
Oh my god, I'm not seeing that movie.
Ben is gonna see Wonka opening night just because he forced us to take it off the schedule.
I don't have to see it. I'm not gonna see it.
No, it'll be streaming on
Ben,
Max
if I
soon
buy-
enough, and you can watch it every night.
Ben, if I buy you a ticket
A golden ticket.
to go watch Wonka,
Shut
will you
up,
go
Ben.
watch Wonka?
Shut up.
You'd have to throw in something else than, hey, there's a free ticket to Wonka. That's not very enticing.
I'll buy you a beer if you go see it.
There you go.
That's more enticing.
I know what you
Free
like.
ticket and a beer. It's pretty
I
good.
probably need 2 to get through this.
But anyway,
yeah.
back
Oh,
to
yeah.
the Holdovers. Back to Ben being held over. I don't really know what that meant. But anyway, Angus Tully, Dominic Sessa, debut performance.
I think everyone was really good in this film. I don't
Mhm.
know who those people are, to be honest, but I think they were good.
Shut up, I want to talk about the rookie.
Okay. The one with
Good.
Nick and Phil. I'm not a big fan of that show, actually.
Well, Nathan Fillion, ABC. Check it out. So this kid got the role, and I read briefly about it yesterday after I saw the movie. This kid got the role because the film was being largely shot at his school, and one of the teachers, I guess, had talked with the production early in the stages and was like, hey, you should let kids from our school audition. And he had never done a film before. And he stepped up and he took this role. And he knocks it out of the fucking park. Like,
Yeah.
first of all, playing off of Paul Giamatti and one of Giamatti's best performances I've seen from him, and matching him moment for moment with both drama and levity in every single scene. I mean, whether he's leading Hunnam, whether Tully is leading Hunnam on a chase throughout the school grounds and then dislocating his shoulder on the gym floor, or if he's, sitting in a psych ward opposite his father who is dealing with mental distress, mental illness.
I think those are some of his best scenes.
He's able to play both ends of comedy to drama in a comedy drama so well. He has the most promising career ahead of him.
All right,
if he can do something like this with
calm down.
I'm gonna say it, Ben. I'm gonna say it. I like
you-
Dominic Sessa, and I'll go one step further. He's my pick for best supporting actor right now.
Relax. I do think he's really good. The one thing I will say is there are moments where it's kind of apparent that like he hasn't really done the role. When he says like my father is dead, it's a little bit of overacting. It's a little too much.
The situation demands it in that scene.
No, it's the way he says it. It's not like there's pain. It's like he's screaming, "My father's dead!" Like there are some moments where he doesn't.
Ben Green in this role.
It's true. It's true.
I think we're splitting hairs here.
I think he's really good. but I just needed something to like, you know, calm George down, like, you know, relax. There's lots of talented actors.
Okay, let's see him do something else.
I hope he
And
comes
then
out and says he hates acting, is never going to do it again.
Actually, the thing that I most wanted to say is I think he has, I don't want to say an easy job. It's not an easy job to like perform, especially like first time actor. Um, God, that sounds so wrong when I said it out loud. Um,
You're
but
right, Ben. I should temper my expectations for his career and say, let's see some more performances from him.
he is basically playing his life right now, which I think he really helps him. You know, he has that like youthful exuberance, you know, that a kid should for, you know, a teenager. He clearly channels a lot of that stuff. But I don't know what his
Got a lot
family.
of charm too. Like
Yeah.
he's sort of like if
Well,
you
look
had
at him. I'm
if
sure
you
he's a
had
charming
kept
fellow. I'm sure all the ladies just, you know, are gobbling him up.
if
Max said. You didn't like the
am
way
I
I said
now?
that?
Moving on, George, you were going to say
If
something. You were going to say something just brilliant, weren't you?
I was gonna say something that Ben was probably gonna get annoyed at actually, but if you know now I can't remember what I was gonna say. Thanks, Ben.
That's completely my fault. Um, but yeah, I think everyone's really good in this film. I don't think anyone's as good as Paul Giamatti. He really,
Mhm.
he really,
Yeah.
he did it, man. Those stretches.
I if Paul Giamatti were not an actor, I think he would be a prep school teacher of something like civics or like ancient classics.
I mean, what it kind of reminded me of is like, look, I love Dead Poet Society. I think it's a great film, but it is an absolutely ridiculous film. That would never happen in real life. This is like a Dead Poet Society, but for real life, you know?
I get what you mean.
If that
Dead
makes
Poet
sense.
That's fair.
Society, but for real life. That's the
That's a
quote.
fair assessment.
Like,
Yeah.
again, I love Dead Poet Society. As my sister always said, that teacher would be fired like within a week if you acted this way. Nobody could act that way at a prep school like that and get away with it. And the stakes are incredibly way too high. I like that this movie is much more grounded in things that are not more, you know, extreme. Like that Dead Poet Society deals with like suicide, so that's kind of as extreme as you can get for a prep school. Um, I like that this just deals with people's emotions, their relationships. It's not adding too much to that. It's just sort of experiencing what a lot of people probably experience. You know, these are more common circumstances, being alone at Christmas, um, just being alone in general, you know, having that feeling of being discarded.
It's the feeling of being discarded, but then, and this is what I was going to say earlier, the idea of found family. Because there's that one moment at Christmas where Angus says, you know, I've never had, or I can't remember the last time I had a family dinner for Christmas, and then he corrects himself and
Yeah,
sort of stammers over what he thinks is more appropriate to say, even though he just expressed his emotion.
it's a good Freudian slip right there, which is,
Yeah,
even though they're not biologically family, this movie shows throughout that sometimes biological family is great. Like in the case of Mary, you know, that's an amazing story. But some other families are not really, they don't really care for you. Just because they're blood doesn't mean they care for you. I think he
we
realizes
get
that even though Hunnam is an asshole sometimes, he does actually care for him, you know? And certainly Mary is a very caring person. These are people that care.
we get three people in our three leads from three different family dynamics, right? Ben, you touched on Mary and her son, and the fact that Curtis's father died before Curtis was born, and so they were really, she was a single mom raising this young man into a soldier, student, and then soldier. You got Hunnam, who,
Filtered by circumstance, as they say.
yes, victim of the draft.
Well, no, It's much worse than that. Oh, actually, no.
Well,
I guess he did get drafted, but he was willing
yeah,
to go and go on the GI Bill. There's an essence of like some people, some war movies definitely take the draft like that's the death sentence. I think what's more haunting in this is that they mentioned the story of like after it's like, hey, it's not all bad. I got the GI Bill. I can go to college after. It's
yeah.
like hope, a life after. That's something that a lot of people experienced probably in that time. Shouldn't say probably, they did. It's definite.
So you got that family dynamic. You've got Hunnam, who is all alone in life. He thinks that he might have a shot at romance with the office administrator, but then finds out that at the Christmas party finds out that she is involved with someone, and so he doesn't have a wife, he doesn't have kids, his parents are dead, he is all alone in life. And then you've got Angus, who has the horrible situation and treatment of his father by his mother, of him by his mother, of you know, the dynamic between his mother and stepfather going off on this
Being
excursion.
Stanley.
Three different family dynamics coming together here, and to put these, God damn it, Ben, to put these
But
characters together, especially during the holidays, Christmas time, New Year's, the idea of a found family happens a lot in film. And we see it with, a bunch of misfits coming together and sort of forming that bond in that unit. But to set it in this circumstance really, for whatever reason, it hits home.
I think it's because they really feel like real people. The circumstances are real. Too often in films, you have too dramatic of circumstances. These are dramatic enough, but they feel the need to add the drama into like the visualization of the film. These are people dealing with trauma that is not visualized, um, and that makes it all the more real because many people deal with trauma. It doesn't always have to be your hand gets blown off. And especially around the holidays, lots of people deal with this sort of thing, even if it's not the exact circumstances. Being alone at Christmas is something that everyone dreads and everyone feels at a certain point, unless you have a great track record. But, most people, at least one Christmas, or, for Jews, they don't really care about Christmas or even Hanukkah. But the point stands that you don't want to be alone during the holidays, for New Year's and all that stuff.
Or, to the other end of it is that, even if you're surrounded by people and you think you're having fun, like the kids that got to go off on the ski trip, you're not really getting much out of it, right? They come back and they're still pissed at Hunnam for making them take the makeup exam, right? They didn't really gain anything. And obviously that was the point, but
But I think the idea is sometimes like those Christmases, those holidays where you feel like, oh, well, everything is, terrible. You find something. There's a comfort to like, just going home to family, and that's nice, but you don't change. You just sort of embrace like, wow, this is so nice. I got my family here, great food, whatever. But
It's
you don't change.
it's a
Sometimes
break.
it's
It's a
yeah.
break from reality. It's not facing circumstance like the way that our three main characters do.
And yeah, I guess it's a good
It's so real.
they basically have to face reality when they are no longer given that break from reality.
Especially a character like Angus, well, I guess Angus and Hunnam, who are both sort of at the last minute thrown into this circumstance where they
Mm-hmm.
expected to have that break and then it's suddenly ripped away from them.
Yeah, and they're
And is
better
it
off.
feeling that we've all experienced? You've been expecting something and then the powers that be change the plan on you, and a human desire to have control over situation, and when that control is taken away, it sucks, and you got to figure
Yeah,
out how to deal with it.
I think Hunnam is the best example in that he literally was just going to do the same thing, except now he has this like chore of watching over people. And so he could just do whatever the hell he wanted, but instead he wants to inflict pain on them, at least in the beginning. There's like a nice growth for him and for Angus, where they become more like they realize what they have and also what they don't have. And they want to be better people. And they sort of embrace that side. And I think it's lovely. But you also do see like this ridiculousness of Hunnam's like distaste for this job. And that like, yeah, I guess it kind of sucks, but you're literally doing nothing. This is a better thing for him. And even for Angus, like even though he loses his job at the end, he's going to be a better person because he's actually going to go out and do the things he just dreams about. Says, "Oh yeah, one day I'll do this." But
Go do
there's
it.
this sense of like this guy's like 60 years old. I assume he's as old as like Paul Giamatti. You got to go do that. And there's also the sense of like death with Curtis, where he's a young person. Like not even what 25 or whatever
Not
she
even
said.
20. I think
Not even 20.
Not even
they said
20.
he died at 19.
Yeah.
Died at 19. It's like life is short. Go out, do something.
Yeah, that's an interesting comparison, Ben, because
Mhm.
Hunnam is sort of, by way of the events of the movie, put into a position where he is afforded the opportunity to go out and live his life. And then you get a character like Curtis who never had that chance.
Yeah.
So, again, all of these situations are so authentic.
I'll bring back once more. It's a great comparison to Rome. So a lot of the historians were old. It was like Pliny. Um, Cicero was quite old. But he mentions like he gives them meditations or whatever. Um, he mentioned Cicero like many times.
He gives meditations as a gift many times. His
Yes,
box is full of them.
but the funny thing is that a lot of the people that were actually soldiers and actually did a lot of the history making, they were young and died. And the historians were the old people, the wealthy that were afforded the opportunity to sit back and write it down. It is actually a really good comparison. I mean, Rome is used so many times. People love classics. People love to insert that. But it actually does work really well for, this sort of regimented old school old school. That's a terrible phrase. All right. But
Said it
you get
though.
what I did. Don't quote me
Old
on
school venue of education.
venue of education.
Old school academia.
But yeah, I mean it actually does really work, especially with the dynamics of Curtis dying in the war, imperialism, that's Roman trade, they're the Roman Empire for a reason. After Augustus, I should say, before the Republic. But yeah, all the soldiers were young, like did a lot in their young age, and the historians just sort of sat back and recorded. And now he gets the opportunity to actually go out and like just record history.
And
He's
he gave back the opportunity to Angus to sort of pick
to not,
which journey he wants to take.
yeah, to not die in war.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shout out the Chateau restaurant in Waltham, Massachusetts, presented in this film. I've had a couple of good meals there.
Is that the place where they have that nice meal?
Towards the end of the
The
movie.
Miller.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh wait,
The
no,
Miller High Life.
that was the restaurant where they took the Cherries Jubilee, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Is that
cherries
the
and
one
the
you're
ice
talking
cream, and then they
about?
poured a bunch of liquor on it and set it on fire on the hood of the car.
Yeah.
Right outside the Chateau restaurant. I've had a couple of good meals there. I enjoy it. I
Mhm.
recommend it.
Yeah, but they seem like kind of stuck up. So
I mean, that was an actor playing a role in a film then.
is this going to? I don't know if you guys know this. Sideways famously had a lot of derogatory things that they said about Merlots, to the point that that movie crashed the price of Merlots for at least 20 years.
Oh, I had heard about that.
Will this do the same to this damn restaurant? They're like, oh no, I don't want to eat there. They're sticklers. They're
No,
stuck.
No,
get out of here.
no,
I don't
Well,
know.
no, Ben.
The Holdovers is full of real situations, real characters, humor, heart, drama, holidays, found family, torture,
It's a real movie.
revenge, giants, true love. All right, I got off on a tangent on my favorite movie of all time there. Sorry about that.
But
The Holdovers is currently playing in some movie theaters. Hope you can find it near you. It's also available for rental or purchase, not sure, for $20 on Prime Video.
You can
So
buy it and rent it.
yeah, you can
can't
buy
get
it.
out to the
On
theater,
your just
find
buy
a way
it.
to watch it. It's so good. You're gonna enjoy it. Watch it with your family.
Let
This
me give you a
holidays.
let me give you a tip. Rental is $20. Buy it is $30. Buy the movie. If you watch it twice, you've saved $10. And I don't care if it's going to stream later for free. You just want to have that movie, okay? It's a good one.
That might be the highest praise I've heard Ben give a movie since Banshees.
Finance expert Benji Green.
Ben
Yeah.
held over. All right, we're back next week. We're going back to 19th century France, which is, I think, where we lost Declan this week. I think he's stuck somewhere in the Napoleonic Wars.
He's been watching every Napoleon movie. And any movie
Including
took place during it.
Night
Napoleon.
of the Museum, Battle of the Smithsonian.
Oh, but also Napoleon Dynamite.
Eat the food!
Ah! Ah!
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
I can figure out how to actually end the recording and not the meeting.
This is kind of awkward.
I don't really know.
Hey
We're in kind of
guys. Hey, we're still
uncharted.
here. How's
So,
everyone doing?
Tonight we're talking about Napoleon, and none of us
We're
has
going.
seen it yet. So
I have
next week.
actually.
I've actually seen all the Napoleon films. Napoleon 3 is my favorite.
All right, good night.
Bye.
Good night.